Please don't leave us. Papa, no.
Have you ever been thrown out of your home on a stormy night, pregnant, with a child holding your hand, and only $3 in your pocket? This isn't fiction. This is the true story of a 9-year-old girl named Zola, who carried her pregnant mother through the streets for 3 days, begging for help, and being ignored, even exploited. The truth: some hospitals will let a woman die at the door because she's $196 short. Zola was turned away, even as her mother screamed in labor. I discovered this story while researching migration crises in Lagos. I spoke to the people who lived it. What happened next changed my view on humanity, because in this video you'll see how compassion saved a life, a child forgave the unforgivable, and $3 became the start of everything. Zola knelt on the floor, crying for someone to help. One woman, Madame Nia, stepped in, paid the bills, saved her mother. 9 years later, Zola, now a nurse intern, cared for the dying man who once abandoned her, her own father. If you've ever believed one person can't change a life, watch this, because 1 minute from now, you just might believe in miracles. The wind slipped through the gaps in the old wooden walls, carrying the scent of wet soil and something distant, almost metallic. Rain tapped relentlessly on the patched-up tin roof, a rhythm too steady to soothe. Inside, the dim flicker of an oil lamp swayed with every draft, casting trembling shadows along the splintered floorboards. Zola sat cross-legged on a frayed mat near the door, her knees pressed close to her chest as she hunched over a piece of brown paper. The crayon in her hand was worn down to the size of her pinky, but she still drew, slow, careful lines forming a crooked sun and a stick-figure family holding hands, her brow furrowed with a child's fragile concentration. Abeni watched her from the low bed in the corner, her swollen belly rising and falling beneath a threadbare cotton wrap. Each breath came with a quiet strain. Her hands cradled a chipped ceramic mug of ginger water, steam long faded, but she held it like it still gave warmth. Her smile, though tired, didn't leave her face. It lingered like a prayer. Then footsteps, leather shoes on wet stone. Zola froze. The door slammed open. Wind surged in, tossing Zola's drawing across the room. Rain lashed inside for a moment, before the figure stepped through, tall, dry, composed, as if untouched by the storm. Kwame. He stood there in a sharp navy blue suit, the lapels still glistening with stray raindrops, the red tie knotted tight against a starched white shirt. His hair was slicked back, no longer the unkempt coils Zola remembered. Even his scent had changed, now cologne, not charcoal, and eucalyptus. No hello, no smile, just cold eyes scanning the room like a landlord inspecting property. Abeni sat up straighter. "You're back." Kwame set down his umbrella without answering. His gaze landed on the puddle forming near the door, then flicked to Zola and back to Abeni. "I won't stay long." Zola stood confused, eyes bouncing between her parents. "I got promoted," Kwame said flatly. "Regional manager, company car, apartment in the city. I thought you'd like to know." Abeni blinked. That's good. I'm moving out." He cut her off like slicing fabric. "Actually, I've already moved." Silence. Outside, thunder rumbled low like a warning. Abeni set down her mug, her voice cracking just slightly. "What do you mean?" Kwame didn't flinch. "There's someone else. Her name's Amara." Zola's fingers curled tight into her dress. "You can't be serious," Abeni whispered. "Kwame, we don't have anything. Not even a place to go. The baby. You'll figure it out. You're resilient. He turned away, already heading to the wooden chest in the corner, pulling it open with practiced ease. He began to toss clothes into a bag. Hers, Zola's, folded without care, some still damp from the wash line. Abeni stood now, wincing, one hand bracing her back. "You're throwing us out," she said, disbelief cracking into something deeper. "In this rain?" Kwame zipped the bag. "This isn't about rain." "Then what is it about?" she said louder now. "What did we do to you?" He looked at her then, really looked, and that was somehow worse than the silence. "You did nothing," he said, "but I'm done pretending I belong in this shack. I have a new life now, one that doesn't include dragging around a woman I barely know anymore and a child who isn't mine." Zola's voice pierced the room. "I am your child." Quam's jaw clenched. He didn't look at her. The oil lamp flickered harder, as if even the light couldn't bear witness. Abeni reached for his arm, but he pulled away. "Don't touch me." "You begged me to marry you when you had nothing," she said, her voice trembling. "You cried the day Zola was born. You made me promise we'd build everything together." "And I did build," he replied coldly. "You just stay behind." Then he picked up the bag, walked to the door, and tossed it out into the downpour. Abeni moved forward, stumbling, clutching her belly. "Get out," he said, low and final. "I want you gone before morning." Lightning flashed. Zola ran past him into the rain, trying to drag the bag back in, but it was already soaked. She slipped on the stone step, mud splattering her legs.
Mama, she cried. "He's lying. He doesn't mean it."
Abeni followed her out, barefoot, into the storm. Kwame didn't. He stood in the doorway watching them as if they were strangers on someone else's porch. Then he reached for the door. Zola turned, shaking, hair plastered to her forehead, and screamed, "Please!" The door slammed shut, and the rain swallowed everything. They sat under the sagging awning, their backs against the door that no longer belonged to them. The storm poured in sheets, relentless, drenching everything they had left. 2 thin blankets, a bag of clothes, and Zola's drawing, now a blur of colors bleeding into the earth. Abeni's breathing slowed but stayed heavy. Her hand stayed protectively over her belly. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Zola curled beside her, holding her mother's arm tight. She kept staring at the door, willing it to open again. It didn't. Time passed in strange rhythms. Rain, thunder, wind, silence. Then Abeni spoke, voice low, not even meant to be heard. "We'll walk, when the rain stops." "To where?" Zola whispered. Abeni didn't answer. The wind picked up, blowing through the banana trees in sharp waves. A dog howled somewhere in the distance. Zola pressed her forehead to her mother's shoulder. He had really done it. He had left, not just walked out, but shoved them into the storm like garbage, like they were nothing, like the 9 years meant nothing, like her little brother inside her mother meant nothing, like love meant nothing. Zola didn't cry. Not then. She waited until the rain slowed, until the world quieted just enough to hear her own breath. Then, softly, without warning, she sobbed, barely audible at first, then harder, jagged and raw, as she buried her face in her mother's shawl. Abeni pulled her close and kissed her hair, and neither of them noticed the small drawing, waterlogged and torn, sliding slowly down the stone step until it disappeared into the puddle, dissolving. The third night bled into the pavement like a wound that wouldn't close. Zola's feet, bare and blistered, slapped against the hot concrete as she chased the outline of a woman in a bright yellow dress, one of the few passers-by who hadn't crossed to the other side yet. "Please, please, help," Zola gasped, her voice hoarse from calling too many strangers. My mom. She's going to have a baby. Please, she needs help. The woman glanced over her shoulder, slowed a little, then quickened her steps, muttering something sharp under her breath. Zola stopped chasing. Her legs trembled. Her chest burned. Her mouth was dry as ash. She turned around, panting, and stared back toward the alley where her mother lay, curled beside a stack of crushed cardboard. Abeni's body barely moved, only the faint rise and fall of her back, giving proof she was still holding on. Her dress was soaked with sweat, despite the cool night, her face pale beneath the jaundiced flicker of the broken street lamp. The scent of exhaust, urine, and roasted corn mixed in the air, too much for her small lungs. Zola pressed the heel of her palm to her forehead. No more tears left, just the heat, just the waiting. She knelt beside her mother and held her hand. Just a little longer, okay, Mama? She whispered. I'll find someone, I promise. Abeni's eyes fluttered open, lips parting without sound. Zola squeezed her hand tighter, then stood again. The city didn't sleep. Music thumped from distant bars, car horns barked without rhythm, and footsteps passed like tides. But none of them stopped. None of them looked twice. She tried again. A man with a suit and shiny briefcase. Please, sir. My mama. She's sick. She's pregnant. Not my business, he snapped, brushing past her without breaking stride. Another. A teenager. A vendor. A pair of women laughing too loud. Every time the same. A glance. A frown. Sometimes a shake of the head. Most times, nothing at all. Zola's voice cracked mid-sentence now. Her throat hurt from the air, the crying, the screaming. Her small fists were balled at her sides. She wanted to scream, to hit someone, to rip the world open until it cared. But all she could do was beg. The last man she approached was different. He didn't laugh. He didn't scowl. He stopped. He looked her up and down, slow, calculating. His lips curled into something like a smile, but not the kind that warmed. Well now, he said, tilting his head. Where's your daddy, little girl? Zola hesitated. He left. His eyes shifted past her, toward the alley. And Mama's not well, huh? She nodded. She's going to have the baby, right now. We just need a ride, a place to rest, just for tonight. He took a step forward, then another. Zola stepped back. He crouched down to her level. Poor thing, he said, voice syrupy. You know, not many folks would stop. Not for a kid like you. Zola's breath hitched. He smiled again, eyes flicking over her shoulder. Why don't you show me where Mama is? Maybe I can help. You two just need a place, right? Zola didn't move. He stood slowly and offered his hand. You got a name? She shook her head. He stepped closer. Don't be scared now, I won't hurt you. But her legs wouldn't move. Her arms froze. Every hair on her neck stood up. There was something wrong in his voice. Something oily. Like the way Kwame used to speak when he was charming someone he hated. Zola took a step back. He didn't like that. His smile dropped. I said I can help. She turned to run, but a sound shattered the moment. A roar, mechanical, fast. A blur of red and blue lights skidded into the alley entrance, wheels screeching on the wet concrete. A tuk-tuk. The engine coughed, then roared again. Hey, a voice shouted. The man stepped back quickly, hands raised, trying to feign innocence. But the driver had already jumped out. A skinny young man in a yellow soccer jersey, fury in his eyes. You touch that girl again, I'll break your teeth. The man lifted both palms. Relax, I was just helping. Liar, Zola screamed, pointing. He was trying to take me. The man backed away, fast, blended into the street like a ghost. that had never been there. The driver turned to Zola. "You okay?" She nodded barely. He squatted to her eye level. "My name's Tay. I drive all night. I saw you yesterday too, but..." His voice cracked. "You've been out here 3 days?" She nodded again. He looked past her, saw Abini's still body. Without another word, he opened the back of his tuk-tuk. "Get your mama in." Zola ran. She tugged at her mother's arms. "Mama, we're going. There's someone. He's real. He's here." Tay carried Abini himself, gently, cradling her as if she were glass. The tuk-tuk sputtered as he started the engine, the little machine coughing through gears as they sped toward the nearest hospital. Zola sat pressed beside her mother, holding her hand, murmuring half prayers, half promises. The city blurred by, neon signs, shouting vendors, rain-slick streets reflecting yellow light. Then the gates, metal, tall, white letters on rusted iron, St. Miriam Memorial Hospital. Tay swerved through the open driveway. Abini groaned. The sound was low, animal, full of pressure and pain. Zola clutched her tighter. Tay jumped out and waved frantically.
"Help! She's having a baby!"
No one moved. 2 nurses glanced from the doorway, then looked away. Tay cursed under his breath. "They'll need paperwork." "I have money," Zola cried, reaching into her pocket and pulling out a crumpled napkin with coins folded inside. $3.12. Please. Tay looked at her. His jaw tightened. He left the engine running. "Stay here," he said. "I'll go talk to them." But Zola didn't listen. She jumped out barefoot, bolted toward the doors, and burst into the sterile light of the reception.
"My mama's having a baby," she shouted. "She's bleeding. Please, please help her."
People turned, not many. The woman at the front desk frowned. "Is she insured?" Zola blinked. "What? Does she have coverage or cash?"
I have $3.
The woman laughed without smiling. "Triage policy changed last year. No intake without $200 in cash or proof of insurance." Zola stepped forward.
"Please, please, she's dying."
"Security," the woman called. A guard appeared at the end of the hall. Zola dropped to her knees. "I'll clean the floors. I'll carry bedpans. I'll do anything. Just save her." The guard's shadow fell across her. She flinched. Then, a voice. Calm, certain, older. "I'll pay." Everyone turned. A woman stood near the door. Tall, silver hair pulled into a soft bun, a scarf wrapped tight around her shoulders. "I'll pay for them both," she said. The receptionist narrowed her eyes. "Do you know them?" "No," she said, "but I don't need to." She pulled a worn wallet from her coat and slid 2 bills across the counter. "Process them under the Emergency Humanitarian Clause, Section 8B. The receptionist hesitated. The woman held her gaze. "I used to sit on the hospital board. I know what's legal and what's shameful." The nurse said nothing, just took the money. Zola looked up at the woman, trembling. "What's your name?" she whispered. The woman knelt, brushing a strand of hair from Zola's cheek. "You can call me Naya." Behind them, the nurses finally moved. Abini was lifted onto a gurney and rushed away. Zola tried to follow, but Nia held her back. "Let them work," she said softly. Zola's whole body shook. The tears came again, hot and ugly. Nia took her hand. "You're not alone anymore." Zola leaned into her, and for the first time in 3 days, she let someone hold her. Zola thought the hospital would smell clean, like soap or rain or maybe the cold scent of tile. But it didn't. It smelled like metal, like old sweat trapped under plastic sheets, like bleach poured over things that wouldn't wash away. It smelled like fear. She sat alone in the far corner of the emergency waiting area, arms wrapped tight around herself. The light above her flickered, once, twice, then held steady. Her eyes stayed on the corridor where they had taken her mother. The wheels of the gurney still echoed in her chest. She had counted each turn until the sound faded. Now there was only silence and the thump of her heart. No one had come back. Not the nurse. Not the silver-haired woman named Nia. Not even Tay, though his tuk-tuk had idled outside for a few more minutes before it coughed and drove away. Zola shifted on the hard bench, legs swinging above the floor. Her toes still hurt from running, from cold. Her dress had dried stiff on her back, sticking to her skin. She was afraid to speak, afraid if she said something, the nurses would remember she didn't belong here. She pressed her hand into her pocket and pulled out the folded napkin. Still there, the $3.12, damp, crumpled, but real. She clutched it like a prayer. The hallway door clicked open. Zola jumped to her feet. A nurse in green scrub stepped into the lobby and walked straight past her, clipboard in hand. Didn't even glance down. Zola's voice was too small. "Excuse me." The nurse didn't stop. She ran after her. "Please, I'm looking for my mom. Her name is Abani. She's pregnant. She was bleeding." The nurse sighed without turning around. "What room?" I don't know. They took her back. A lady paid for us. She's having the baby. Now, maybe." The nurse slowed just a little. "I just want to know if she's okay." The woman finally looked at her. Her face was tired, not angry, just empty. "We're understaffed," she said. "You'll have to wait." "I've been waiting." "You'll have to wait longer." Zola bit her tongue, hard. The nurse disappeared down the hall. She stood there for a moment, unsure where to go. No one stopped her. No one noticed her. So she kept walking, past the rows of people sleeping in chairs, past the vending machines with blinking red lights, past the security guard who looked up but didn't care. She reached the sliding doors to the main wing. They opened with a hiss. The hallway was brighter, quieter, colder. She walked barefoot across the tile, hugging herself tighter. Numbers on the walls, letters on doors, everything humming. Machines, vents, her own pulse in her ears. Then she saw it, the sign. Maternity, South Wing. She ran. Her feet slapped the floor. Her arms pumped hard. She didn't care if someone stopped her now. She needed to see her mama. The hallway narrowed. The light got softer. Pinks and blues and pale greens. There was music playing faintly, like a lullaby too slow to soothe. She skidded to a stop in front of the double doors. Closed. Staff only. Authorized personnel. Zola reached for the handle. It didn't budge. She knocked. Loud. Nothing. Again. Nothing. She pressed her forehead to the glass. On the other side, a woman in white pushed a baby in a clear bassinet past the corridor. She didn't see her. Zola pounded harder. "Please," she said. "Please, I just need to see my mom. Please." Her voice cracked. Her throat burned. The door remained still. Her fist slid down the frame. She slid too, onto the floor. Knees bent, arms limp. Her whole body sagged under the weight of nothing. She didn't know how long she stayed there. The light shifted. People passed behind her. No one stopped. Her body started to ache. Her eyes closed. Her stomach growled, then gave up. She might have fallen asleep if it weren't for the sound. The beep, soft, rhythmic, electronic. She lifted her head. The nurse's station glowed around the corner. And next to it, another sign. Cashier. After hours payments. Zola got up. She walked slowly, one step at a time. The tiles felt sharper now. Behind the glass window sat a bored woman flipping through a magazine. Zola reached up and placed the napkin on the counter. The woman looked over. Zola unfolded it, laid out the coins and crumpled bills. "I want to pay," she said. The woman stared at the money, then back at Zola. "For what?"
My mom, she's having a baby. That's already covered. Someone else paid. I know, Zola whispered. But this is mine. It's all I have. The woman looked at her for a long moment. Then she reached over and slid the napkin back toward her. You keep it, she said. Zola didn't move. The woman softened. Just a little. You're a brave girl. Zola nodded and turned away, back down the hall, back toward the closed door, back toward the place where no one would let her in. She sat again, this time not in front of the door, just beside it, and waited. The hallway lights dimmed to nighttime mode. Her back ached. Her feet stung. Her eyes stayed open. That's when the whisper came. A hiss. A voice. Soft. Hey, little one. Zola turned. It was a janitor. An old man with kind eyes and a mop in his hand. You looking for someone? She stood fast. My mama, she's in there. I think she's still having the baby. He scratched his beard. You family? Yes, I'm her daughter. He glanced at the doors. Wait here. She did. He walked away, not fast, but with purpose. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. She almost gave up again. But then he came back, and he wasn't alone. The silver-haired woman, Nia. She walked beside him, a paper bracelet in her hand. Zola. The girl ran to her. Nia knelt, slipping the bracelet over her wrist. This lets you in, she said. They've finished. Your mother is resting, and someone wants to meet you. Zola's heart skipped. Nia pressed the button on the wall. The door opened. Zola stepped through. The room smelled different. Clean. Warm. Like cotton and powder and something new. The light was soft. Her mother lay in bed, eyes closed, lips parted in sleep. Beside her, in a clear bassinet, a baby, tiny, brown, wrapped in a blanket with yellow ducks. Zola walked to him. He moved just slightly, his lips puckering. Her hand reached down. She touched his hand. Fingers the size of matchsticks curled around hers. A sound escaped her. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. Just a release. A nurse stepped closer. He's healthy, born at 3:12 a.m. Zola looked up. 3:12? The nurse nodded. She opened her palm, showed them the napkin, the coins. $3.12. Nia smiled. Zola looked down at the baby again. His name, she said softly, is Neo. A beginning. The first chapter of something that didn't hurt. The first time Zola touched the world again, it was through the glass of a hospital window. She stood barefoot, forehead pressed to the cold pane, watching the city breathe beneath her. Neon signs blinked through the fog. Taxi horns echoed off wet asphalt. The smell of disinfectant still clung to her skin. But out there, life moved on, as if nothing had happened. Behind her, a beanie slept, still pale, still weak, her breath shallow but steady. And next to her, swaddled in a pale green blanket, baby Neo lay curled against her chest, his tiny lips twitching in dreams no one could translate. Zola didn't speak. She hadn't spoken much since the birth. The moment had been too big, too fragile. Words felt like glass on stone. One wrong sound and it might all shatter. She pulled her arms tighter around herself and turned back to the room. The nurse had brought toast that morning, a banana too, but Zola hadn't touched it. Something in her felt floaty, like she was watching herself from outside her body, like she hadn't truly landed back on Earth yet. That's when the knock came. Not loud, not rushed, just one, firm, deliberate. She moved slowly, opening the door only a crack, and there stood Nia, same gray scarf, same eyes that looked like they had seen too much and never looked away. Zola stepped back to let her in. The room seemed to hush around her, as if the very air recognized someone different had entered. Nia glanced at a beanie, then at the bassinet, then at Zola. How's he doing? She asked. Zola nodded. Sleeping a lot. He's allowed. They stood quietly. Then Nia reached into her bag and pulled out a paper, a document with a blue header, and too many lines to read all at once. I'd like to help your mother, but the hospital requires a guardian's signature to release her into someone's care. Zola's heart kicked. She looked at the form, then at her mother. She's not strong enough to sign. Nia folded the paper gently. Then I'll sign. Zola blinked. You can do that? I can, with her permission. And yours. But why? The question spilled out before she could stop it. You don't know us. Nia sat slowly in the chair by the bed. She crossed her legs, hands resting quietly in her lap. I knew someone once, she said. A girl, about your age, bright, brave. The world ate her up because no one helped when it mattered. I remember her face. Every day. She looked at Zola again. You remind me of her. Zola didn't know what to say. Nia placed the form on the tray table. When your mother wakes up, I'll talk with her. But I need you to know something now. Zola nodded. You're not invisible. Not anymore. The words lodged in her chest. Nia reached into her coat again and pulled out a small object, an old silver brooch shaped like a dove, wings outstretched. She pinned it softly to Zola's dress. This was mine when I was your age. It's not for fashion. It's for remembrance. Zola touched the metal. It was warm. Then Abini stirred. Her eyes blinked open, slow and confused. Nia stood and walked to her. Mrs. Abini, she said gently, you're safe. Your baby is safe. And I'd like to help. Abini tried to sit up but winced. Nia leaned closer. I'm not here for charity. I'm here for family. If you'll let me. Abini studied her, breath shallow. Zola moved to the bed, slipping her hand into her mother's. Abini nodded, and Nia smiled. 3 hours later, the discharge papers were signed. Abini was wheeled through the hospital corridors like a ghost being brought back to the land of the living. Neo lay against her chest in a carrier wrapped in second-hand fabric, gifted by one of the quieter nurses. Outside, the morning sun blinked through smog. A breeze moved through the trees just hard enough to feel like a new beginning. At the curb, a black sedan waited. Not a tuk-tuk, not a taxi, a real car. Zola stared at it like it might vanish if she blinked too fast. Nia opened the back door and gestured gently. Let's go home. Zola helped her mother in, careful not to jostle the baby. Then she slid into the back seat herself, legs drawn up, arms folded tight. The seats were soft, the windows clean. Everything smelled like old leather and eucalyptus. The engine hummed to life, and for the first time in days, Zola didn't hear sirens. Just silence, safe silence. The ride took nearly an hour, out of the crowded city, through cracked back roads and past vendors setting up early stands, until they reached a hill surrounded by jacaranda trees and thick, untamed grass. At the top stood a house, not large but proud. 2 stories, a wooden veranda, blue shutters faded by time, a garden gate hanging on one hinge. But the roof held, the walls stood, the door open. Zola stepped out of the car and stared. It wasn't the mansion of fairy tales, but it was real. She followed Nia up the stone path. Inside, everything smelled of lemongrass and wood polish. The floors creaked, but not in a broken way, in an old, alive way. There were books on the shelves, blankets folded with care, windows open to the trees, a place that breathed. Nia led them upstairs. I've made up the guest room, she said. It's yours now, all of you. Abani's voice was thin. We don't want to impose. You aren't, Nia replied. You're here because someone should have opened a door for you long ago. She paused. And I believe in doors staying open. She helped Abini into bed, laid Neo beside her. Zola stood in the doorway, still holding the napkin in her fist. The money long gone, but the number stayed in her head. 3.12, Neo's birth time. And she only realized now also the exact amount of money they'd had. She turned, walked down the stairs, and sat on the bottom step, and cried, not from fear, not from loss, but from the weight of being held. She didn't hear Nia walk up behind her, but she felt her hand. Strong, steady, warm. They sat in silence for a long while. Then Nia said, "I've spoken to a lawyer. I'd like to make this official. I don't want to replace anyone. I just want to protect you." Zola looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means," Nia said, "if anything happens again, they won't be able to turn you away." Zola thought of the hospital door, the one that wouldn't open. Then of this house, this door, and slowly she nodded. Outside, wind rustled the jacarandas. Somewhere far away, a new chapter had begun. But here, in this quiet, breathing house, something had healed, just a little. The first time Zola stepped into the schoolyard, her shoes didn't fit. They were borrowed. Too stiff, too white, too clean. The kind of shoes that made your feet sweat and your steps feel too loud. She looked down and saw them glowing against the red dirt, as if they didn't belong to the ground they touched. Neither did she. Children buzzed around her like bees in a dry season. Shouts, laughter, the thud of a ball hitting concrete. Someone whistled through their fingers. A girl ran past and tugged Zola's sleeve by accident. Didn't look back. Zola stood still, clutching the corner of her new backpack. The straps were too tight. She turned to glance at the gate. It was still open. Nia stood just outside, watching from a distance, not smiling, not waving, just there. A teacher with glasses and a clipboard gestured toward the steps. "Class 4B. You're in that building, last door on the left. You'll find your name on the desk." Zola nodded without speaking. The classroom smelled like chalk and pencil shavings. Dust clung to the window ledge. Desks scratched with names. One corner had a poster of a tree with paper leaves, each student's name on a different one. She found hers in the back row, Zola, written in black marker. The letters shaky, like someone uncertain had written them. She sat down, her legs dangled. No one spoke to her. Not yet. When the teacher started, Zola tried to focus, but the room pulsed like an echo chamber. The words turned to background noise. Her mind kept drifting to the house on the hill, the wooden gate that creaked when you pushed it, the sound the kettle made just before boiling, the way Neo wrinkled his forehead in his sleep, like he was remembering something painful from a past life, the way Nia's eyes always seemed to know more than she said. After school, she walked back alone. The other children ran ahead in groups or climbed onto crowded buses. Dust rose in little spirals as they disappeared. When she reached the house, the door was open. She could smell stew cooking. Inside, the air was warm and thick with thyme and lentils. Abeni sat on the sofa with Neo sleeping against her chest. Her face was fuller now, still tired, but not like before. There was color in her cheeks again. Zola dropped her bag by the door. Nia stepped out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "How was it?" Zola shrugged. "Okay. You speak to anyone?" "Not yet." "You will." Zola didn't reply, just moved toward the table. There was a new notebook waiting for her, unopened, wrapped in twine. A small silver pen tucked underneath. She touched it. The cover was soft, blue. No name on it yet. She opened to the first page, blank. Abeni watched from the couch. Zola sat, pen in hand, fingers hovering. Then slowly she began to write. Not a story, not a letter. A promise. One day, I will become a nurse. I will help people like my mom. I will never let a hospital door close on someone like me again. She wrote it twice, then underlined it. Her hand shook, but the ink didn't smear. She closed the notebook and held it to her chest. That night after dinner, Nia handed Abini a stack of papers. Guardianship forms, legal, final. Abini hesitated. "I want them to stay with you," she said, voice trembling. "But I want to stay too." Nia nodded. "This is not about replacing anything," she said softly. "It's about expanding the word family." Zola watched her mother sign. Then Nia signed. Then Zola was asked to sign too, just one line to show her agreement. Her hand didn't tremble this time. Days passed. Zola started answering questions in class. She learned the names of the other children. Ate lunch with a girl named Binta, who liked to braid her hair and tell jokes too fast. At home, she changed diapers, learned how to warm milk without spilling, started reading storybooks aloud to Neo, even when he couldn't understand the words. Sometimes Nia watched her from the hallway. Sometimes Abini joined in and hummed lullabies under her breath. One evening, Zola stood at the kitchen sink washing dishes. The faucet squeaked when she turned it. Water rushed over her fingers, warm and soft. Outside, cicadas buzzed. A breeze pushed the curtain gently. She looked out and saw someone at the gate, a man, not tall, lean, dust on his sleeves. He looked lost. Zola froze, then stepped back. Abini appeared beside her. Her face changed. "Don't worry," she whispered. "It's not him." Nia was already at the door. The man didn't try to come in. He just bowed his head and held something out. A parcel, wrapped in newspaper, a label taped across the front. To Zola. Nia took it, thanked him. He nodded and left. They opened it together. Inside, a pair of shoes, worn, scuffed, but clean, wrapped in tissue, and a note for the girl who ran barefoot into the storm, from the man who saw but didn't stop. "I'm sorry I waited so long." Zola touched the shoes. She didn't speak, but she wore them the next day. In class, she raised her hand when the teacher asked about careers. "I want to be a nurse," she said. No one laughed, not even a whisper. The teacher smiled. Later that week, Nia added a plaque to the wall in the hallway. It was small, carved from wood. It read, "Here lives a girl who ran toward hope." Zola stared at it for a long time, then touched the dove-shaped brooch on her chest, and smiled. The world hadn't changed, but the house had, and so had she. The glass shattered before it hit the floor. Kwame stood motionless, eyes blank, staring at the whiskey bottle that had slipped from his fingers. Amber liquid spread across the marble tile, creeping toward the velvet curtains like blood. Somewhere behind him, music blared from the speakers, fast, heavy, wrong for the moment. But he didn't move to turn it off. His phone buzzed again. He didn't reach for it. The room was dim, thick with cigar smoke and sweat. Half-eaten food on silver platters, empty glasses tipped over like fallen soldiers. A girl in a red dress laughed from the balcony, unaware or uncaring that he was unraveling. Kwame lowered himself slowly into the leather armchair. His hands trembled. The promotion had come and gone, the car repossessed. The apartment now smelled of mold, where water leaked from the ceiling, and no one came to fix it. The concierge no longer nodded when he entered the lobby. His credit card stopped working last week. He told Amara it was a bank glitch, but she knew that's why she wasn't here tonight. She had taken the last of the good wine in the red suitcase she always left half-packed. He should have known she'd go. She never stayed longer than the money. Kwame tilted his head back, staring at the cracked chandelier. He remembered buying it just to impress her. Not because they needed light, but because it sparkled. He closed his eyes and saw Abini, not the woman he left. The one from before, smiling in the rain, holding Zola in her lap, drawing shapes in the dust, laughing when he told her he had a plan, back when plan meant sleeping less and dreaming more. He opened his eyes fast, too fast. His chest tightened. He stood abruptly and stumbled toward the kitchen. No more bottles. Nothing left but tap water and silence. He grabbed his coat and keys. The elevator smelled like bleach. His own reflection in the mirror startled him. The beard too long, eyes too hollow. He stepped onto the street and began to walk, nowhere in particular. The city buzzed around him, too loud, too bright, too alive. He passed storefronts filled with things he once thought mattered. He passed people in suits like he used to wear. No one looked at him, not anymore. He turned onto a side street and stopped. A poster clung to the wall, half peeled by wind and time. A woman's face, not a beanie, but close enough. The name of the hospital, the same one. St. Miriam Memorial. There was a fundraiser banner at the bottom. He stared at it, and memory hit like cold water. Zola's voice screaming, her tiny fists pounding on glass, the way he walked away without turning back. He fell to his knees before he realized he had stopped walking. The pavement bit into his palms. His breath came sharp, too shallow. A man passed by and glanced at him. Didn't stop. Kwame whispered into the night. What have I done? No answer, just wind. And somewhere far off, the sound of church bells ringing. The next morning he showed up at the old neighborhood. Same gate, same mango tree by the corner. But the house was gone, replaced by empty ground and weeds. He stood there a long time, unsure what he expected. A letter nailed to the fence? A voice calling him in? A miracle? Instead, he walked, past the bakery that once gave them leftover bread, past the stall where a beanie bought fabric back when she still sewed. The world had moved on without him. He passed a girl selling oranges, offered her a smile. She didn't return it. He kept moving. By sunset, he had no more energy. He sat on the curb, head bowed, arms heavy. Then something brushed his foot. A flyer. He picked it up. A job fair. Volunteers needed at a community health clinic. No pay, but food, shelter, a clean bed. His pride flared, then sputtered. He folded the paper and tucked it into his pocket. At the house on the hill, Zola sat cross-legged on the porch, notebook open on her lap. Neo slept inside. Abeni was hanging laundry. The breeze was gentle, brushing her braids against her cheek. She was writing a report for school, something about community heroes. She had chosen Nia, the woman who opened doors, who taught her that family wasn't only blood, who made hot cocoa on cold mornings and never asked for thanks. She paused to stretch her fingers, then glanced up and saw him, far down the hill, too far to be sure, but something in the shape of the shoulders, the walk. Her heart thudded. She stood slowly. He came closer, slower with each step, clothes torn at the sleeve, shoes dusty, no suitcase. When he reached the gate, he stopped, didn't open it. Just placed something on the post, a folded photograph. Zola walked down to it, keeping her distance. Kwame raised his eyes, and the look in them wasn't defiance. It wasn't pride. It was small, empty. I didn't know where else to go, he said. Zola said nothing. I didn't come to stay, just to say, I remember. I remember all of it. Still, she said nothing. He stepped back. She picked up the photo. It was the old drawing, the one from the night of the rain, water-stained, torn but still recognizable. She looked at him. He waited. I'm not the same girl anymore, she said. I know. She nodded and turned away. Didn't invite him in. Didn't slam the door either. Just walked back up the hill, carrying the drawing and the silence. The name on the chart made her stop breathing. Robert Quam, the nurse said, tapping the clipboard. Male, mid-50s, found unconscious near a soup kitchen. No ID, no insurance, probable liver failure, homeless, brought in by the sanitation crew. You're on the receiving rotation, so he's yours. Zola stared at the name. Her hands stayed frozen mid-air, latex gloves already pulled tight. The air in the ER felt too thick, the lights too white. "Room 7, she asked, barely above a whisper. The nurse nodded. "You'll want to wear a mask. He's been vomiting for hours." Zola turned away, heart pounding. She walked down the hallway, past the swinging doors, past the IV poles and supply carts. Her footsteps felt disconnected from her body. Each one rang louder in her chest than it did on the linoleum. Room 7, curtains drawn. She hesitated, then pulled the curtain back. The man in the bed was thinner than she remembered, his face sunken, gray in his beard, a tangle of hair that hadn't seen a comb in months. His skin had lost its shine. His breath wheezed against the oxygen tube. But she recognized him, every ruined inch of him. Kwame, her father. Zola's fingers curled into fists. He didn't see her. His eyes were closed, mouth slightly parted. The chart said he was stable, for now, but his vitals told another story. She stepped inside, checked the drip, adjusted the pulse monitor, moved as she had trained, precise, clean, without emotion, the way she'd practiced on mannequins, then on real people who never knew her name. She was here to care, not to feel. But this wasn't just any patient, and she wasn't the same girl he'd left behind. She washed his face, changed his gown, cleared the vomit tray. He didn't stir much, just murmured sometimes, in sleep, names she didn't know, until the third day. She entered with a clipboard and found his eyes open. They blinked slowly, then focused on her. She froze. He blinked again. "Zola?" Her jaw clenched. "You're awake." I thought I was dreaming." "You're not." Silence. The monitor beeped steadily beside them. "I'm in a hospital," he said. "Yes. Did you bring me here?" "No, the street crew found you." He looked around the room, confused, then back at her. His lips trembled. "You're a nurse. In training, clinical rounds. You look like your mother." She didn't answer. His fingers moved weakly on the blanket. "I didn't expect to see you again. I didn't expect to find you like this." He tried to sit up, but failed. "I'm sorry." She stayed silent. "I was wrong," he said, "about everything." She watched his chest rise and fall, his body so small beneath the blanket. The man who once threw her into the storm now reduced to this. "I don't deserve anything," he said. "But if I could undo it, I would. You can't." His eyes filled. She saw it then. Not guilt, not regret. Shame, raw and quiet. He wiped his face with the edge of the sheet. "I see you now, standing there, strong. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." "Then, do you forgive me?" Zola's breath caught. She stepped closer, took his hand. He flinched. She didn't let go. Her voice was steady, clear. "I forgive you." He closed his eyes. A tear slipped down his cheek. "But," she said, "you are not my family anymore." He looked up. She kept holding his hand. "I don't hate you," she said, "but I will not carry you. I have others to carry now." His lips moved. No words, only breath. She stood, pulled the blanket higher over his chest, then turned. He watched her walk out, and for the first time since he lost everything, he didn't feel rage. He felt peace and loss. Two things he hadn't allowed himself to feel, not until now. In the break room, Zola sat alone, staring at the water in her cup. Her reflection danced on the surface. She touched her chest, the brooch still pinned to her scrub pocket. A dove, its wings slightly bent from age. She thought of Naya, of Abeni, of Neo. The people who taught her love didn't need revenge to survive. That strength was not in striking back, but in letting go. The nurse walked in. "Patient in 7. He asked for you." Zola stood, breathed, then walked back down the hall, not as a daughter, but as a nurse. The church bells tolled low and slow, each note echoing like a heartbeat across the city. Black cloth draped the high windows, catching faint light that streamed through the cracks. The pews were full, heads bowed. A silence heavy as stone filled the room, broken only by the soft, unsteady breath of those who grieved. Zola sat between her mother and her brother, hands clasped in her lap, the dove-shaped brooch glinting faintly on her dress. Her chest rose and fell in measured rhythm, but her eyes never left the front. There lay the casket, polished wood that seemed to breathe its own quiet dignity. Atop it rested a single white lily. Nothing more, nothing less. Madame Nia was gone. The hymn began, voices trembling, then rising, filling the hollow space with fragile strength. Zola's throat tightened, but she did not sing. She let the sound wash over her instead, her gaze blurred, tears unshed, as memory pressed in. The first night Naya held her hand in that hospital lobby, the quiet mornings with tea and laughter in the house on the hill, the words that had steadied her when the world spun too fast. Now those hands were folded forever, the voice silenced. The priest spoke of a life lived in kindness, of doors opened and burdens carried, of a woman who had given without keeping count. Zola listened, but in her mind she heard something else, Nia's voice telling her, "You're not invisible. Not anymore." When it ended, when the final note faded and the air grew still, the lawyer stepped forward with an envelope. His voice was even, practiced, but his words cut through the air like a chisel carving stone. Madame Nia has left her estate in full to the family she named as her own, to Abeni, Zola, and Neo. Gasps scattered among the pews. Some turned their heads, whispering. Zola felt her mother's hand grip hers tighter. The lawyer continued. This includes the house on the hill, its grounds, and the accounts set aside to ensure their future. She made her wishes clear. Zola's breath caught, not because of the house, not because of the money, but because the world had heard it now. They were family, written in ink, recognized, undeniable. Her eyes burned and she lowered her head. After the service, as people filed past offering condolences, Zola stood quietly, watching strangers murmur about inheritance and legacy. None of them knew what it truly meant. The nights of hunger, the rain-soaked steps, the door that would not open. For her, this was more than a will. It was proof that their suffering had not been unseen, that kindness could last beyond the grave. Outside, the sky was a hard gray, the air cold and damp. A small crowd gathered, waiting for the casket to be lowered. Zola stood at the edge, clutching Neo's small hand. Abeni's face was wet with tears, her shoulders shaking beneath the veil. Then, through the crowd, a familiar figure appeared, a tuk-tuk driver's cap. The man stepped forward quietly, his eyes soft, his arms opening just slightly. Tay. Zola's heart twisted. He came to her, bowed his head, and without asking wrapped his arms around her. Not as a stranger, not as a rescuer, but as someone who had been there at the beginning. "You made it," she whispered into his shoulder. "I promised," he said. They pulled back, eyes meeting. A circle closed, unspoken but understood. Later that night, when the house grew quiet and the murmurs of mourners faded, Zola sat alone in the study. The air smelled faintly of cedar and lemon polish, as if Nia herself had just stepped out. On the desk lay a sealed envelope with her name written in elegant script. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside, only a single sheet. It read, "Zola, remember the day you placed your coins on the counter? $3.12. The world thought it was too little. I knew it was everything. Carry that courage forward. It will be worth more than gold. Love, Nia. Zola pressed the letter to her chest. The tears came then, full and breaking. When dawn arrived, she dressed in white. Not mourning black, but the pressed uniform of a nurse. The fabric smelled of starch, the sleeves stiff against her arms. She adjusted the collar, pinned the dove brooch to her pocket, and stood before the mirror. Her reflection looked back, older, steadier, carrying the weight of all that had come before. She walked to the hospital gates, the same gates that once shut her out, the same doors that once closed in her face. Now they opened. Inside, the corridor smelled of antiseptic and coffee, the beeping monitors, the shuffle of shoes, the hum of voices, all familiar, all alive. A nurse at the desk smiled at her. First day. Zola nodded. Yes. She was led to the ward. Beds lined up, patients waiting, some restless, some silent, some lost. She approached the first bed, an old woman, skin pale, breath shallow, eyes clouded but searching. Zola pulled a chair close, sat down, and reached for her hand. It's okay, she said softly. You're not alone. The woman's eyes flickered, her lips trembled, and Zola smiled. Not the smile of a child begging at a locked door, not the smile of someone desperate to be seen, but the steady, radiant smile of someone who had found her place. Light streamed in through the tall window, spilling across her face, catching the silver dove on her pocket. It felt like Nia was there. It felt like hope had taken form. And in that moment, the promise she had written in a child's notebook, the vow made with trembling hands, bloomed fully, not just for her, for everyone who had ever been turned away, for everyone who had ever stood in the rain with nothing but faith. And $3.12. The world outside kept moving, cars honking, voices rising, bells ringing. But here, in this room, in the clasp of two hands, something eternal remained. Zola's voice was low, steady, carrying more than words. I'm here, and the light held her. There are moments in life when everything we thought was solid crumbles beneath our feet. Walls collapse, doors close. The people we trusted most may walk away, leaving us to stand alone in the storm. And in that silence, it is easy to believe the world has turned its back on us, that hope itself has packed up and gone. But storms do not last forever. Rain eventually gives way to light. Even in the harshest night, there is always a hand, sometimes a stranger's, sometimes a friend's, that reaches out when we least expect it. That simple gesture reminds us that we were never invisible, and that compassion has the power to change the course of a life. The story you've just heard is not only about suffering or betrayal. It is about what grows out of the soil of pain. It is about resilience, the way the human heart can break yet still beat with courage, the way a soul can be scarred and still shine. Loss can wound us, but it can also strip away illusions and make space for truth, for dignity, for healing. Every act of kindness ripples outward. A coin placed on a counter, a word spoken at the right time, a door opened when others slam shut. These moments seem small in the eyes of the world, but they can echo for generations. They remind us that what defines a life is not wealth or status, but the measure of love we choose to give and the mercy we dare to extend. Forgiveness, too, is not about forgetting the wound or excusing the harm. Forgiveness is a release, a decision not to let bitterness chain us to the past. It is a way of saying, I will not be shaped by what broke me, but by what I decide to build from here. In that choice lies freedom. In that freedom lies peace. And when we carry forward the promises we make in our most fragile hours, promises whispered in the dark, written in the margins of our pain, we become living testaments that hope can survive anything. We show that light is not destroyed by darkness. It is defined by it. The dawn is always sharpest after the longest night. So if you are listening now with a heavy heart, may you know this: your story is not finished. Even the most fractured beginnings can lead to radiant endings. Even the loneliest path can curve toward belonging. And even the smallest seed of courage, once planted, can grow into a legacy of hope. Thank you for walking through this journey with us. If these words touch something deep inside you, we would love to hear your thoughts. Share your reflections in the comments. Let your voice join the circle and help this story continue beyond the final line. And if you wish to stay with us for the journeys yet to come, please follow and subscribe to the channel. Your presence, your listening, and your heart mean more than words can ever capture.